The average British bloke doesn't ask for much, just a pint, a decent fry-up, and darts on the telly that isn't rigged like a game of Monopoly with your older brother. But apparently, even that's too much to hope for, because Andy Jenkins, once a respected name in the world of darts, just got busted for match fixing. Yes, you heard that right. The man who made a living throwing tiny missiles at a circle of numbers has now lobbed his career into the bin, and not even with decent form. Now, if you're not up to speed on your darts history, and shame on you if you're not, Andy Jenkins, or Rocky as he was known on the Oki, wasn't some pub player with a lucky streak. He was the real deal, a proper contender. Back in the early 2000s, he had the kind of grit that made him both admired and slightly terrifying, like a landlord who doesn't speak much but always remembers if you're late with rent. In 2007, he made it all the way to the semi-finals of the PDC World Championship. That's no small feat. We're talking televised matches, roaring crowds, and walk-on music that says, "I might not win, but you'll damn well remember me." Jenkins had it all, the talent, the edge, and just enough swagger to sell it. But as with most good British tales, the second act got a bit wobbly. You see, Andy wasn't exactly the poster boy for professionalism. In 2009, he got himself suspended after a scrap with fellow player Terry Jenkins. No relation, except perhaps spiritually. Apparently darts is more of a contact sport than we thought. Then in 2019, he got slapped with a fine and a suspended ban for mouthing off at a match official. That's 2 strikes if we're keeping score. And in British sport, the third one usually comes with a lifetime supply of awkward silences and bad press. Still, people forgave. This is darts after all. Half the crowd's on their 4th pint before the first 180 gets called. A bit of cheek? Expected. But even those with a soft spot for the old rogue weren't ready for what came next. On April 24, 2025, the Darts Regulation Authority handed Jenkins a proposed 11-year ban from all DRA-sanctioned events, not for a dodgy throw or a dramatic tantrum, but for match fixing. Serious stuff. They also fined him £17,580. The charges: fixing multiple matches, passing inside information to bettors, and placing bets himself, 88 of them to be exact. That's not the behavior of a man trying to win matches. That's the behavior of someone trying to cash in on losing them. And before you ask, yes, he's appealing, because of course he is. At 54 years old, an 11-year ban would have him returning to the Oki at 65, assuming he fancies walking into the senior circuit with a Zimmer frame and a tarnished legacy. Still, under the rules, he gets a fair crack at appealing. It may not change much, but hope springs eternal, especially when there's money involved. The sad part is, you can almost see how he got here. The steady slide from contender to cautionary tale. He drifted from the limelight, hopped around tournaments like a man searching for lost change, and started to look less like a player and more like someone holding on. In darts, there's no soft landing. Either you hit the double or you don't. And somewhere along the way, Jenkins stopped aiming for the board and started playing a different game entirely. You know how they always say, where there's smoke, there's fire? In Andy Jenkins' case, there was enough smoke to trigger the fire alarms in every pub from Portsmouth to Preston, and yet for over a year, barely anyone noticed, or wanted to notice. Because in darts, dodgy form can usually be blamed on nerves, a heavy night out, or someone shouting, "Wah hey," just as you're lining up a double 10. But in this case, the missed shots weren't just unlucky, they were suspicious. Between February 2022 and July 2023, Jenkins played in the Modus Super Series, an event meant to give veterans and rising players a platform to stay sharp and earn a few quid. Only Jenkins apparently had a different business model in mind, one that involved leaking match details and, allegedly, playing just badly enough to influence the odds. It started subtly, odd betting patterns on matches no one was really watching, quiet whispers in back rooms, bookies scratching their heads when large sums of money started coming in for Jenkins to lose, against players ranked much lower. And sure, darts has always had its share of surprise upsets, but there's a difference between a shock result and a bloke missing the board like he's never seen one before. The Darts Regulation Authority, not exactly known for its dramatics, finally decided something was off, so they launched an investigation, and what they found was, well, deeply unsporting. According to the DRA's report, Jenkins fixed or influenced the outcomes of 12 matches. Not 1, not 2, 12. That's enough to warrant a Netflix docuseries and a very tense family Christmas. He was also accused of sharing inside information with gamblers and, just for good measure, placing 88 bets himself between March 2022 and May 2023. That's not a bit of flutter. That's someone trying to fund their retirement one missed double at a time. And while Jenkins denies fixing the matches, he did admit to placing those bets, which is already against the rules. Players are not supposed to bet on any darts matches, let alone the ones they're throwing themselves in. It's like being both the chef and the food critic, only here, the food mysteriously keeps ending up undercooked. The thing is, match fixing isn't as easy to spot in darts as it is in, say, football. There are no obvious dives, no theatrical rolling around on the floor. In darts, it's all in the wrist, and in Jenkins' case, the wrong kind of flick. But even so, questions started to build. Fans who'd followed him for years noticed something was off. He looked distracted, disinterested. His throws lacked intent, his rhythm was gone, and his body language screamed, "I'm here for the check, not the challenge." Behind the scenes, the evidence was stacking up. Phone records, betting slips, testimony, the whole lot. It wasn't just about missing darts, it was about missing ethics. When the DRA dropped their disciplinary decision in April 2025, it hit like a ton of tungsten. They didn't just suggest he'd had a lapse in judgment, they said, flat out, that he manipulated matches and had brought the sport into disrepute. In darts, that's basically the equivalent of being told you've taken the soul out of the pub. The proposed 11-year ban and £17,580 fine weren't plucked from thin air. They were carefully calculated based on the number of infractions, the scale of the misconduct, and the sheer audacity of it all. For context, 11 years is the longest ban handed out by the DRA in recent memory. It's the sort of sentence you give to someone who didn't just bend the rules, but snapped them over their knee and tossed them in the skip. And yes, Jenkins has the right to appeal, but no amount of spin or triple 20s is going to erase the stain this has left on his record. Now that the dust has more or less settled, if you can call a disciplinary grenade dust, we're left staring at the wreckage of what was once a fairly respectable darts career. Andy Jenkins, once a semi-finalist at the world's biggest stage, is now better known for dodgy throws and betting slips than for hitting bullseyes. And at 54, with an 11-year ban looming like a rain cloud over a Sunday roast, things aren't looking particularly darts and roses. Even if his appeal is successful, and that's a mighty big if, his reputation has already taken a nosedive sharper than a bad checkout. Among fans, it's been a mix of disbelief, disappointment, and the usual British response to scandal. A resigned sigh, a raised eyebrow, and someone muttering, "typical," over their pint. The darts community itself hasn't exactly rushed to his defense either. It's not that people didn't like Andy, some did, some didn't, as is tradition. But this is the sort of betrayal that hits home. Darts is a sport built on trust. Trust that when two people walk onto the oche, they're both trying to win. It's not about how many doubles you miss, it's about whether you miss them on purpose. For younger players trying to break into the sport, this whole affair is a warning shot. Match fixing might seem like a shortcut to easy money, especially when your best days are behind you and the phone stopped ringing. But the risk isn't just getting caught, it's being remembered for all the wrong reasons. Ask anyone now about Andy Jenkins, and they won't talk about his 2007 semi-final run or his early BDO days. They'll talk about the ban, the bets, the fix. And the impact goes beyond Jenkins himself. This scandal has forced the DRA and the wider darts world to take a long, hard look in the mirror. If a veteran with over 30 years in the game can go rogue under their noses, who else might be tempted? Are the lower leagues, with their modest prize money and minimal oversight, fertile ground for shady dealings? To their credit, the DRA is reportedly tightening things up, more monitoring, stricter protocols, and an even bigger spotlight on betting activity. But the damage is done. Trust, once lost, is harder to rebuild than a dartboard after a pub league final. As for Jenkins, well, even if his appeal shaves a few years off the sentence, the writing's on the wall. A return to competitive form in his mid-60s would be nothing short of miraculous, and given the circumstances, unlikely to draw much sympathy. If anything, he might find more success in writing a memoir than rejoining the oche. Title suggestion: 180 Mistakes, the Andy Jenkins story. Still, if there's one thing we Brits are good at, it's gallows humor. And perhaps the most fitting summary of this saga came from an anonymous forum comment tucked between GIFs and score predictions. At least when Andy Jenkins threw his career away, he didn't miss.